Hello and welcome to A Stitch in Time. Today is Friday, June 15th, 2018, and this is episode 64. My name is Carol and I'm known as Knits and Pearls on Ravelry. The show notes for this and every episode can be found on the blog and also in the episode thread in the Ravelry group. If you'd like to get in touch, you can do so via private message on Ravelry, by leaving me a comment on YouTube, or by posting in the Ravelry group, and I'll try and respond as soon as I can. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today. It started out rather overcast, but we now have quite a lovely sunny day here in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, Canada. The temperatures are supposed to go up quite significantly beginning tomorrow. We're expecting temps in the high 20s tomorrow and then in the low 30s after that. That's like high 80s, low 90s for those who are more familiar with Fahrenheit. So yeah, summer weather is about to arrive. I'm glad that we've had, well, I can't say I'm glad we've had lots of rain this past week or so, but it's good. I got my bedding plants in and that's given them a really good chance to what's the word I'm looking for? Establish themselves, get a good head start in the garden, and from now on, though, we're going to have to be more diligent about watering if we're going to have those high temperatures, because the ground dries out pretty quickly when we do. So it's been a pretty good week here. Last week I had the weekend to myself and quite enjoyed that and got lots of knitting done then. And I also did a bit of sewing this week. So settle in. I've got a few things to show you. One finished project, well, two actually. One knitting, one sewing, and a couple of works in progress. And I also did some reading this week. So yeah, make yourselves comfortable. Here we go. So the first thing I'm going to show you is my finished Maytham shawl. It is by Helen Stewart, and this is the first shawl in the Secret Garden themed Shawl Society 3. And so it is named for the estate that inspired the fictional estate that is in the book. So I'll show you. I'll have to stand up so you can see it all. You can see it is a half pie shape. I knitted all in Sweet Georgia Yarns Tough Love Sock. This variegated, whoops, caught on my ring. This variegated here is called Anthem. And then this dark purple, I can see through it now that I've blocked it. It's quite sheer. Here, I'll maybe double that up and that might help. So if I'm holding it up, the light comes through quite a bit. That's a little better. That beautiful purple, and you may not be able to tell on the video, but it's a really nice tonal purple, lots of different shades in it. So that is called Ultraviolet. And then this gray here, it's kind of got a purple cast to it. I don't know if that's coming up on the video either, but that gray is called London Fog. And this panel is made obviously to represent the Maytham, which was the, I think it's Misselthwaite is the, I think that's what it is, something like that. That's the name of the fictional estate in the book, but this is made to represent that. And then you can see I did a little more Anthem, did another bit of Ultraviolet, switched back to Anthem, and then did the border in the Ultraviolet. The shawl pattern itself was written for 2 colors, but I didn't have enough of, I didn't have 2 skeins of one color that would be suitable, and so I kind of mixed up the pattern and added in colors. So this, this portion of the Ultraviolet and the Ultraviolet at the bottom I substituted in for where it would have been Anthem if I'd had enough. Anyway, it's a nice large shawl. It's about 72 inches wide and probably a good 2.5 feet long. So it'll be really nice to wrap up in. Nice size for that. Not now because it's going to get too warm, but very, very, very happy with how it turned out. I wasn't sure about the whole 3-color thing when I began, and I was concerned that this, with the big gray swath in the middle, that there wouldn't be enough, or that the other stripes would be too narrow in contrast, but I'm actually really, really pleased with how it turned out, and I'm very anxious for the next pattern to come out. I'll just lay this over here. So yeah, that almost all I worked on last weekend, and I was just working on the bind off when my husband got home late Sunday afternoon. So that felt really good. I only worked on that and one other project, which I'll show you in a minute. That's all I worked on the weekend. It was, as I said, I really wanted the weekend just to be knitting just what I felt like, not what I had to do. So once the weekend was over, Monday arrived, I got back to business and started working on my brother-in-law's socks again. So these are the Athos socks by Kiowa Coffee. Not a very good photo because of the black and white, but I can show you the real thing so you don't really have to guess what they look like. So I am not finished, but I do have quite a bit done. I just need to do, I think, one more 16-row pattern repeat for each sock, and then it should be time for the toes. So I'm very hopeful that that's the case. So there you go. Bring that in a little bit closer so you can see the textural kind of diamond pattern on here. That's kind of in the way. Let me move the yarn and the needles. Or actually, what I can do is just flip it. There, that's better. Now, I have to say there's something I really, really appreciate when sock designers think about ribbing and heel flaps and don't just default to a standard 1x1 or 2x2 ribbing, that if there is a pattern that they do it so it naturally leads into the pattern. So I really liked that this pattern did this. I just saw a mistake though on the ribbing. Can you see here? I started out with doing, see if you can see it. This one here started out with a row of 2x2 ribbing, and somehow I did the wrong knit or purl. I guess I purled when I should have knit, and then I just kept on going. Oh well, I'm not changing it, and I'm sure my brother-in-law will never notice or care if he did. Anyway, I also appreciated that the pattern didn't just do a standard like slip one, knit one, heel flap. I'll just flip this around so you can see. It also kind of carried the idea of the pattern down into the heel flap. It broke it up into basically alternating rows of knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, and then purl 2, knit 1, purl 2 across. So I like how it looked, but it wasn't, one row, the wrong side rows were instinctual because I knew it was following that pattern. But the right side rows, if there was a logical sequence to when you slipped a stitch or when you knit or purled it, I never caught on, and I had to look at the instructions for every right side row on both heel flaps. And even when working the wrong side rows, even though I knew the pattern of, you know, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, and do it across, because of the slipped stitches on the previous row, it wasn't always obvious if the next stitch was a knit or a purl. And I, a number of times, got to the end, realized I'd mixed it up somewhere along the way and had to take it back. So these heel flaps took me way longer than they normally would. I would have, in retrospect, been happy just to do a slip one, knit one. Although I do like the finished product, I just found it tedious and long, way more time consuming than it had to be. But anyway, it's done now. And I should be able to knock out the rest of these in the next day or two. So happy with that. The only concern I have, oh, I didn't tell you what yarn I'm using. So this is HN Arts yarns, and it is fingering sock weight, 80% merino, 20% nylon, and it's their Meow collection, which are colorways inspired by different types of cats, and a portion of the proceeds go to charities that benefit stray and abandoned cats. And so I am doing the Orange Tabby colorway in honor of my brother-in-law's cat, Misha. But I'm concerned because I'm getting down to having very little yarn left, and I don't know if I'm going to have enough to finish the socks with this yarn. I still have another at least 16 rows to do on each before I do the toe. And I've decided that if I do indeed run short, I'm going to do the toes in this other color from the Meow collection. This is the Maine Coon colorway, and I already knit a pair of socks for my sister, Ed's wife, in this colorway in honor of their cat Sloopy. But they have a third cat called Santine, who is also a Maine Coon. And so I figure if I run out of Misha yarn, I will add some Santine yarn in for the toes, and I think it'll be fun. It's not like the colors are super wonderful together, but they'll be okay, and I know he'll appreciate the sentiment behind them. So I'm almost hoping I run out, because I think it would be kind of a fun thing to incorporate a little Santine. They had Misha and Sloopy. They adopted those cats together a long time ago, and then Santine is a rescue cat that just came into their lives, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. And so he's not quite as long-standing member of the family, but he should be represented too, right? So that's what I'm probably going to end up doing. I really would be surprised if I had enough yarn. It's definitely feeling quite light and small. So we'll see what happens with that. And then the other knitting project, last week, on last week's podcast, I showed you my new Blacker Samite yarn that I had purchased to knit this Belvrade hap. It's actually a half hap, but it's by Rita Taylor. Hard to see on the black and white print. I just hate to waste color for my printed patterns. There's an idea, because it's done in this one, it's I think a 3-color shawl, also printed in black and white, but gives you an idea that there's some rippling feather and fan type stitch that goes along in there. And so the yarn, as mentioned, find the label here, is Samite. It's Silk Blend by Blacker Yarns, and this is the Sunless Hours colorway, which I just love that name. Just has I don't know, just conjures up it's just a really neat name. I like the image it conjures up, I guess is the best way to put that. So this is a little bit of a rustic yarn. It's definitely not really soft. Got a little bit of scratch factor, but I'm enjoying working with it. Sorry, that was my phone beeping there. I'm enjoying working with it very much. So last week I said I didn't know if I should really cast it on or not. I really shouldn't cast it on if I have other shawls on the needles, blah, blah, blah. And I decided last Saturday night I'd been working on Maytham all day and needed a break from it, partly because I was working with the ultraviolet colorway, which is that dark purple, and at night it's really hard to see. So I decided to cast it on, and the first step is just to knit a big triangle in garter stitch with these little loops along the edge. Can you see that? That might. I'm trying to get a spot where it's easy to see these loops. There, that should do it. So once you knit the big triangle to the right number of stitches or loops along each edge, then you pick up along there and knit a border section of lace, and then when that's done you knit an applied border going back and forth over just a few stitches along the rest of the shawl. So it's I like the idea that it has different construction methods for different parts of it. I think that'll help keep my interest. What's nice about this is I can put my Kindle put my feet up on the coffee table, rest my Kindle on my knees, and read while I knit this sort of not so exciting part. You might have just heard my dryer go off. I heard it. I don't know if you can. Anyway, I'm putting these, just these little stitch markers in every 10 loops so that it's easier to count. I think I have to get up to 93 on each side. So that just helps keep track. Plus it gives me a goal to knit towards, because face it, garter stitch, not that exciting. Gray garter stitch, not that exciting. But anyway, it's coming along. I've never knit, I don't think I've knit a shawl in this manner before. Not that I recall anyway. So I think it's going to be a kind of a fun project. No deadline or anything on this one, so that's nice. Because I also did some sewing this week, and this one does have a deadline. So I showed this begun last week. It's a baby quilt for my friend's soon-to-be born grandson. And again, I don't know what you can see. This is behind me, obviously. Hopefully that gives you an idea. And so I backed it with the coordinating print, and then I bound it in complementary kind of tonal green fabric. I did the border yesterday, or the binding, I guess it's called, and I screwed up royally and almost had to take it off and redo, buy more fabric and redo the binding, but I was able to save it. So I found a website. If I remember, I'll put the link to it. And it was just I think a blog post that talked about how you can make your bindings any width you want. I'm fairly new at this whole quilt thing, and I use the finishing method described in this book here, Quilt As You Go, Made Modern by Jera Brandvig, right? Yes, of course I got my fingers over that. And so she uses 2.5 inch strips, which gives you, I think, about a 3/8 of an inch, probably about 3/8 of an inch binding when you're all said and done. And I thought I might want something a little bit wider on this. And actually for the other baby quilt I made a couple of weeks ago, I did a significantly wider binding, followed their suggestions. But anyway, this website tells you how big to cut your strips and how big a seam to sew in order to achieve certain widths of border. So I wanted 1/2 inch, and so it told me to cut 3-inch strips and to sew a scant 1/2 inch seam. So I did that, or I thought I had done that, and then when I finished and went to turn it, I found that it was obviously not scant enough a seam, because I didn't really have enough fabric to fold over and sew down without having the seam bunch up. So I thought, oh, no problem, I'll just trim the seams to a scant 3/8 of an inch, and then I should be fine. What didn't occur to me is when you sew on your binding and you get to the corner, you do a little foldy thing in order to turn the corner. And so when I trimmed the seams, I ended up with raw edges at the corners, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I was trying to fold the fabric in different ways to cover up the seam, cover up the raw edges, and hope that it would hold. And I thought that was it. I thought I was going to have to scrap the whole thing, take it all out, redo it. But then I had an idea. I was able to see that I could turn the binding inside out and stitch along the cut edges about 1/4 of an inch or a little bit more in a seam, and then turn it, press it open, turn it right side out, and that I could, it's not perfect, but I could kind of ease it around the corner without it bunching too much. So that's probably one of the worst ones, which isn't even too bad. There's another. You can just see it's got a little bit of a wrinkle, or not wrinkle, but gathered sort of around the corner. But and you can see a seam, but that's okay. Everything's intact. It's not going to all fall apart. So I was so pleased to be able to save it. And I, on this quilt and the last quilt, I've actually machine stitched along the binding edge. When I've done my other quilting, I have hand stitched it flipped it and hand stitched it all along the back. So the book suggests that if you're going to machine stitch it, you attach your binding to the wrong side, flip it over, and then stitch along the edge. And so I did that. And in this case, because my quilt itself has white fabric, I put white thread in my bobbin so that there's like a little line of white stitching around the edge, but it's not that noticeable, and it just, to me, was just way easier than than sewing it all by hand. I've done it, and I don't mind it for really, I guess what I consider a more, I can't even think of the right word. This is a fairly inexpensive panel, fabric, not extremely time consuming, where I put a lot more time, effort, and money into my other other quilts. So I wanted to finish them properly. So anyway, done, washed, didn't fall apart, so that's good. Washed and ironed, and then I will see my friend either Monday or the following Monday when our ladies group gets together for the last time until the fall. And so it's done. I will get a card and wrap it up and pass it along to her. And the baby's due early July. So anyway, done. I was very happy to finish that. did not expect quite so much drama at the end, but I'm glad that I was able to find a workaround and not have to unpick all those stitches and start all over again. While I was working on my Maytham shawl last weekend, I think it was actually Saturday night, and I just occurred to me that maybe considering the Shawl Society collection this time is based on the book The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, that it might make sense to reread it. I know I've read it before, at least once, maybe more. It's been ages and ages. I realized I didn't really remember a lot about it other than the basic plot premise. Anyway, I found it on my Kindle and I propped it up on my knees, and while I was sitting on the couch, had my feet up on the coffee table, and I in part read it while I was working on the Belvrade hat, because that was just garter stitch, and I can knit something easy like that without having to look at it too much. Same with like a stockinette sock. I can knit it in the car without having to look down or while I'm reading. So I can kill two birds with one stone, and also make the plain knitting a little more bearable, a little less boring. So anyway, I'm really enjoying it. I think now, I've been reading it a few times now before bedtime, read a chapter or two before bed. And yeah, I am enjoying it immensely. I think I'm about 55% of the way through now. And yeah, it's just a really lovely children's book. Again, not so... or I guess a complex and mature enough writing that it's equally as enjoyable for an adult. Sort of on the lines of the young adult fiction that I was talking about last week. So anyway, yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Now I think as the new shawls are released, I'll have a sense of where the names come from, and I don't know if I said this already, help me, maybe inspire me in my yarn choice too. And as I was reading The Secret Garden, it made me think of another book that I absolutely adore. And I don't know if I've talked about this book on the podcast before, but if I have, it's been a really long time, and it's worth repeating. There's a book that my sister and I discovered. I think I got this for Christmas one year when I want to say I was maybe about 10 or 11. I wonder when the copyright is on it. That might help. Originally published 1971, so I would have been 7. So it must have been a little bit older than that. I think I must have been a little older than that. Anyway, it's Mandy by Julie Edwards, and Julie Edwards is actually Julie Andrews Edwards, and she wrote this book. I believe it said somewhere that it was that she wrote it. She lost a bet or a dare or something with her stepdaughter. I don't see that reference here. There she goes. So her first book is the result of a forfeit she had to pay for a bad habit to 11-year-old Jenny Edwards. The forfeit was to write a story. I kept Jenny in mind all the time, says Mrs. Edwards, and tried to imagine what would please her as I wrote. And the plot of this book, it's 10-year-old Mandy lives in an orphanage that borders an estate. And it's in, pretty sure it's in England, but I'm not 100% sure about that now that I think of it. And one day she climbs over the wall and she discovers an abandoned cottage with a much overgrown garden, and it becomes her private place. And she goes and works on the garden, kind of tidies things up, cleans out the cottage, and just spends secret time there. And eventually eventually she is discovered, but it has a happy ending. Of course, it has a happy ending. It's a children's book. I won't reveal what it is, but this was just, I loved this book as a kid, and every so often I pull it out and read it again because it is a really nice story. And considering it was her first novel, maybe even her only novel, as far as I know, I thought Julie Andrews Edwards did an excellent job with it. So highly recommended. It's along the vein of The Secret Garden. So if you like that book, you will most likely enjoy this one too. I wonder if it was even partly maybe inspired by The Secret Garden. It definitely has some parallels to it. So my week, well, I had a lovely, lovely, restful weekend last weekend with my husband away, and just really indulged in a lot of quiet time, knitting time. It was really nice. But you know, you can only take so much of that, so it's always good to get back into a real routine, I have to say. And you know, Monday's my laundry days, so that always gets me right back into real life, you know, some housework and laundry and stuff. But no, it was nice, definitely a nice restful weekend. Tuesday was our good friend's 60th birthday, so his wife had arranged a surprise party for him. So it wasn't one of those everyone hides in a dark room and leaps out and calls surprise kinds of parties. She just invited a bunch of friends and family for dinner, and as we all started arriving, he quickly figured out what was going on. It was really nice. It was held outside and the weather cooperated. I think it started to rain later that evening, but while we were there, it was overcast but wasn't too cold. And other than the mosquitoes, it was very pleasant to be outside. There was lots of bug spray. I actually had a lot flying around me. I had my jacket collar pulled up like this, and as far as I know, I didn't even get any new bites, which is unusual for me. They love me. Anyway, yeah, it was good. There were a couple of couples that were there. One member of each couple used to play on the ball team and no longer do, so we haven't seen them for a while. So it was good to see them and catch up. And yeah, just a really, really nice evening. Didn't wrap up too late. I think we were home by about 9:30. It was just really, really nice way to spend the evening. And I think, well, I know my friend was pleased to have everyone there. And then we were supposed to play ball Wednesday night, but it poured rain all day Wednesday and part of Wednesday evening, and the city closed the field, so it wasn't even an option. So it's actually not a bad thing, have a night off. It did stop raining, sort of, I think by mid-evening it was pretty decent. So my husband and I actually went out for a walk, and I just needed to get out of the house, and it just felt really, really good. And there'll be plenty of ball this weekend. It's the league's mid-season tournament, so that's Saturday and Sunday. So as I said, we're supposed to have some quite warm weather, so hopefully it's not too hot out there on the field. Because I scorekeep, I usually get the advantage of, well, you hopefully get the shady dugout when you, when things work out. We try to get the shady dugout. Anyway, in any case, it's usually better than, they don't usually get as much sun as they do out on the field, so shouldn't be too bad. My husband is going to be combining work and ball. He's been, one of the stores that he oversees that is here in town, they're hiring a new manager, but in the meantime, he's acting as manager. And so he's got to go in and open, he's got to go close, but he's got enough staff on during the day that he's able to leave for 2 of the 3 ball games that they'll be playing Saturday. So he'll be juggling ball and work. This tournament, I think for as long as he's played, I know it's probably 23 23 or 24 years, something like that. They always hold it on Father's Day weekend, and I think there are a few things my husband likes more than playing ball. So for him, it's a perfect way to spend Father's Day. There'll be at least one game on Sunday, so that's good. And you know, we're with friends, and it's usually a good time. By the end of it, you're pretty well done. You've had enough ball and stuff, but we always have a good time. Yeah, other than that, nothing to report on the deck. We are still waiting to have our electrical work done. The weather has not exactly been cooperating this week, and then our electrician is a full-time electrician. He's doing this job on the side, so we kind of have to, we're dependent on his life schedule for when it gets done. So we're hoping maybe this weekend or early next week, and then we can get the actual decking on the deck and get it closer to completion. So yes, on that note, if any of you are fathers out there, I know pretty sure it's mostly women that watch, but if you are a man and a father, happy Father's Day to you. Have a lovely, lovely Sunday, lovely weekend altogether. So I hope everyone is well. Thanks as always for watching. Thanks for all of your kind feedback, comments. I really enjoy interacting with you, so keep it up. Thanks. Take care, everyone, and as far as I know, I'll see you next week. So bye for now.